Hi, good evening and good morning. We're sort of assembled. Ron may or may not be waylaid by a hurricane or other inclement weather. We'll see what happens. But thank you everyone for coming to the Holdback Rack. We're getting the Horsemen back together. Woo! Peter is the most excited Saber fan of all time. I don't know if. Oh, Ron says he's trying to jump on. Coming. Apparently Ron is on a date with a famous singer, actress / businesswoman, not a hurricane.
That's an old J-Lo joke that Peter's been telling for
4 years, 3.
Yeah.
Lindsay's excited. Lindsay says she's obsessed with Robert Barklaw.
Oh.
That's nice. That's high praise.
Hi, Lindsay.
Andrew's here. Emma's here. And Benevolent Adam says, I remember watching Horsemen years ago, and there'd be a topic, and they'd cut to each other, and what's cool to see people outside of North America did.
Yeah.
So that's you excluded, Shane.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, honestly, when people say, hey, will you cover this blah, blah, blah topic about genetics? I say, no, you need to go check Rob Bearclaw's channel because he's already done it and he does it way better than I could ever do it.
Hey, Ron, my man, I can see you.
I am so sorry that I jumped in too late. Can you guys hear me, first of all?
Yes.
Okay, I've been having issues. Believe it or not, I had everything. I have my DSLR, I got my microphone, I got my computer and everything, but I couldn't find the cable that connects my camera to the computer so I actually use this. So I was fighting all over because I just recently moved and I still have a lot of things in boxes. And I was going frustrated trying to find that cable. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to have to log in with my cell phone. And I know the quality is not going to be as great as I really wanted because, I mean, like, this is like the Four Horsemen reunion, you know. And it meant that much to me that I wanted to make sure that I give the best quality that I can because I want to represent what we've done, in all this time that we've been together participating.
That's all right. Just being here, I think, is good. Peter's like the most excited. He's taking pot shots at you.
I warned Peter about that. I warned Peter. I told him, Peter, calm down. I mean, like, there's some issues going on over there.
Billy's here.
Hey, Billy, how are you?
So, all right, let's talk about it. There are young, gentle souls that don't even know what the Four Horsemen were or are. They just heard rumors, in the mist. And anybody wants to start, like, you just explain what it was and, like what your role in it was.
Let's let Rob do it because this is Rob's very first live or podcast. So let's let him kick it off.
Okay. Well, I guess I was one of the early subscribers to Richard's channel, and I enjoyed his content because it was it was aimed at beginners, and he was talking about his journey in the ball python world, and I was instantly attracted to that. And it didn't take Richard very long after a few comments that I made on his videos to actually contact me privately, and we never looked back from there. So I can't remember exactly when I did my first collab with him. I already knew Ron at the time because I'd contacted him about keeping snakes without heat mats in the tropics. And he was the only person that I could find. And I remember Ron responded. And so I already knew Ron. So Ron jumped on board. And then we needed somebody from North America. So Shane, you were it.
I was the last edition. I officially made it the 4 because I think they were the 3 amigos for a minute before me.
Yeah. I don't remember that part. But like by the time I started watching it, there was the 4, but who did Rich commission? And Rich was Predator BP, if people want to know, that don't know his business name. Who commissioned the art? I'm assuming it was Rich.
Yeah,
It was actually Rich, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's cool. Show it off, Shane. And then, and so what you did was you did like clips of, you know, husbandry advice or morph tips, but you would switch from person to person, and you would be like, and now we're going to talk to Rob about the genetics, or Ron about, you know, humidity or whatever. Like it would switch. And so it was like edited together, almost like a talk show or something. So it was actually like a good idea for like a engaging way to give information, but not have one person be droning on for 40 minutes like me. And then they run away.
You know, the thing with the Four Horsemen is we privately we had our own group chats. As a matter of fact, going back to what Rob was mentioning, before we did the collaborations, we each had our own YouTube channels. And I had a separate YouTube channel than the channel I have right now. And through that, me and Richard at that time, we had the same intro music. And that was the first introduction that me and Richard actually got from each other because of the intro music. Someone actually reached out to me and said, listen, you're copying Predator's BP's music. You should actually do your own. And I actually showed when I started my channel, which was actually before Richard, and Richard actually reached out to me because that same person reached out to Richard. And I basically chalked it off that we just had both unique tastes that actually combined and met up with each other just off the music, and we just displayed it we could with the ball pythons. Fast forward, that introduction that me and Richard had, me and Rob was in communication, and then from there we got into Shane, and we had a private chat within Facebook, and I still have all the messages. I still share it because it means so much to me, because it was a buildup of what the Four Horsemen actually was. And from that, Richard came up with the idea, listen, let's do a collab and have each one jump in and chime in, because we each had something to offer, because we're actually ball python breeders in 4 different parts of the world. Rob in Malaysia, Rich in United Kingdom, Shane in Bakersfield, and obviously I was here in Puerto Rico. And our setups were not the same. And that actually was opening the doors to a lot of people that can actually connect with us, because we were given different perspectives. Instead of a set one, a single breeder or a YouTuber would actually present on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So it gave them a bigger possibilities of how they can actually work their collections, their husbandries, their projects, or whatever within the topics. And we each had a different view, but it never actually overstepped the other person's opinions or take on it. It just basically complemented each one's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was good. And I don't think it's been replicated since. Not really. Like, people collab and be guests, but nobody's done that since. So one of a kind. Real. That's why people remember it so fondly, because it was so useful, right? Macamorphs asked the relevant question: why are there only 3 of the 4 horsemen?
Well, so all right, I'll give my side of it. Richard got out. Richard kind of made a transition into boas towards the end, and changed his name to Constrictor Kai, and then just got all the way out and deleted all of his social media. So that's why you only see 3 of the 4.
Mm-hmm. Was he still doing 4 Horsemen videos while he was Constrictor Kai, or had it stopped at that point?
No, he stopped. He stopped. The name change, I think, was an effort to stay in, but with a little bit of anonymity, and that didn't work. So shortly after that, he took everything off. So yes, the name change was the beginning of the end, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't any animosity between any of us 4. If anyone was actually speculating, yeah, there wasn't that. I mean, like, I have to say, I wholeheartedly have to say that each individual within the group, the 4 Horsemen, was a combination of basically a brotherhood, and we never had any stiff moments between each other, exchange even privately. So it wasn't because of that a reason that he dropped out of his channels. He only knows his reasons, and none of us actually know why. I at least on my side, I never got any follow up of why he deleted most of the contents. It's really sad, actually, because basically it's like it's it was good, storytelling that we had, and to just erase that from everything, it's a disadvantage for, not even for us, but I think a lot of people enjoy the upbringing of what it was. But I mean, like each one has certain situations that they go through that we can't explain, but we just have to just support it and just go on from there.
Peter thinks it was his fault. So
Yeah.
Yes, Peter, it probably was.
Yeah, it was. Now, fun fact though, Richard's channel, like when he dropped off, he was the biggest ball python channel in the UK. Like most subscribers, most views, and yeah.
There was a point there where I swear he was doing a video a day, which I can barely do a video a week, right? So like he did a lot of work, and and it was good, and he was a good speaker, and he was earnest, and I think people resonated with that because that's all it really takes is like an earnest attempt to learn and grow and share. So it is sad, but that's what it was, everybody. Now you know. Right?
Yeah.
Now you know. Because when was it deleted? 2 years ago? A year and a half ago?
Which seems longer than that.
I'll tell you when. So about the time Cobra Kai came out, because then that's when he changed his name to Constrictor Kai. And then that was, like Rob said, that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, and if anything, Peter, it wasn't your fault. It was actually Netflix.
Yeah.
And then if anybody wants to see Rich anywhere on the internet, he is still on an interview with R&B Reptiles on their channel. So if you just like want to see his personality or whatever, that is still up because it's on their channel, basically.
I want to add something though too. So like when we were doing that too, we didn't. Looking back, it was whatever, but it was like a time. Like right before COVID and COVID hit, that like there was a big rise in YouTube and ball pythons and all that stuff like right at that time. So there was a little bit of luck on our part too. It was just, in fact, like I remember when all the pandemic stuff hit, like I committed to doing 2 videos a week on my own channel, and then on top of the 4 Horsemen and stuff too. So it was just a good time to be doing all that stuff. Everyone was at home watching YouTube.
Right. Yeah. A lot of channels still exist, but their viewership is just down because people are just busier now because it's not the pandemic anymore. And so some people are like, will get demoralized by that, but they shouldn't, because that's just like the waxing and waning of YouTube culture, which doesn't really have to do necessarily with your hobby. And then like Chad, if you have any questions or whatever, we'll take it. We're just here for chatting, having fun. Was there like a favorite episode that you had for any of you that you were like the most proud of?
I gotta say, it's hard to pick out of anything, but I gotta say, in all honesty, I'd have to say it was a Christmas special because we had so much fun before that, and I mean, like Rich was like, put on the craziest thing that you could think of, and then send me a clip, and I'll just edit it. And Rob just came up with this incredible pointy Santa's elf hat, and we were all like, how can you get that standing so erect? And it was just hilarious.
Yes, I remember that.
All right, Rob. So you have that video copy though, so you could release your version of the Christmas.
I can maybe go back and try and dig that one up and see if I still have
Please.
that. I've just figured out how to get the comments up here on the side of that's how good I am at this. So I see lots of people are actually saying personal hello. So everybody that said hello, I'm saying hello back.
Yeah, well, I'll highlight some. God says, well, I appreciate you guys for your contribution. Thank you. 403 says, really. Uh-oh. Well, I appreciate you guys for your contribution. Maybe Ron will come back soon. He fell off. Mark says, really enjoyed the 4 Horsemen and all the YouTube videos during the pandemic. And then Peter asked Ron a question, and he's not here. So we'll get to that in a second. I'm assuming his phone died or the hurricane got him.
I know the answer to that question though, but I'll save it for Ron.
All right, Shane or Rob, did you have a favorite episode besides the Christmas one?
I enjoyed them all. Richard used to challenge me tremendously. He would come up with a topic and say, "I need you to put the science to this," and then I'd have to go away and try and cook something up.
Yeah.
You
All
know,
right, he's back.
Yeah, I wanted to see what the comments was all about, but I'm on a cell phone. When I hit that, it just kicked me out. You don't forget it. If anything, just tell me what happens with the comments.
Yeah, sorry. I'll try to highlight some of them. We were still Peter asked what your racks were. What brand?
What racks? What brand of your racks did BBM just buy? Oh gosh. Wow. I mean, like it's nothing more than what you have in the stateside. I mean, like for me personally, it's a big accomplishment because it actually goes back to where I believe the ballpark python market is. And I just got ARS racks, and the reason why it's a big deal is because it's not easily shipped here to Puerto Rico. And as a matter of fact, I only know of one person that actually opened the door and connected with ARS to actually be the breakthrough to actually ship to Puerto Rico. And because of this person actually acquired this for the first time, he opened the door for potential clients to actually purchase, and they have a history of making shipments here to Puerto Rico. So I guess after COVID and a lot of situations after that, I had a very unfortunate situation that actually changed the path of my life, and because of that, um, I struggled actually just to continue doing this. And now that I'm in a new place, I actually bought a new home and I moved. One of the things that I wanted to do was actually change everything and start up with something different. And the investment was the ARS racks. And I got 3 different versions of them. And someone actually came to pick up my old racks. If you see in our old videos, you would see the type of racks that I have were basically wood or PVCs. And when that person picked up the rack, he asked me that same question: where do I see the ball python market actually going? And I just pointed to my new racks that I actually invested in, and that actually answers that question. I'm not too concerned about the ball python market because it's what I make it to be. And if anything, the hobby, the collections that I work with, anything, and the continuation of it is a passion for it. And I make or basically I feel that I actually contribute to the market. I don't pretend to worry about what other people are saying or influence me or whatever and stuff like that to veer me off what I'm actually working with. So to answer Peter's question, I mean, like, and I know I went the long road with it, but it was an ARS.
He says it's amazing. So, congrats. Can you read it?
Oh yeah, cell phone, but I'm sorry I could read it.
I think Peter's trying to kiss ARS to get him shipped to Russia now. Yeah.
But let me tell you something. It's funny because Russia, unfortunately, because of what's happening with the political situations, they don't have certain social media contact. For example, they don't have TikTok, they don't have Instagram, they don't have Facebook. The only contacts they have is with YouTube and WhatsApp. And Peter actually contacts me so many times with WhatsApp. And because I can't, most of the things that I upload on Instagram or TikTok, he doesn't see it. So I actually send him a video of my setup on WhatsApp. And he actually sent me a video of his setup. And I was impressed. I mean, like, with everything that they're going through, and this is the point that I want to emphasize. When people talk about the market and everything's going on and stuff like that, there is a war going on where he's at. And they're having expos. And he's investing in snakes and he's investing in racks and everything, even with what's going on. So it actually shows that basically this actually it's going to be long. It's going to be around for a long time, and I don't want to keep testing fate with what's going on in different parts of the world, but we still got a few, I'd say, a few years with this.
Rob or Shane, do you want to talk about the future or markets or your sentiment where you are?
Well, I just say I'm just keeping my head down and traveling on one step at a time. I mean, that's I agree and I don't agree with, like, you gotta like what you're looking at, and like this is the point where you gotta like what you're looking at in your racks, because stuff's not flying off the shelf in my area. So I gotta enjoy what I'm looking at and just stay on my projects and just keep moving forward. I would not, me personally, I'm not gonna like take a year off and not breed snakes, because that's just gonna put you back, you know, in your project. You gotta keep making your steps forward. So
Rob,
that's my input on it.
Yeah, I'm with Ron. I've never really thought about the market or any other influence other than the fact that I love snakes. I love doing what I do, and that's it. That's the bottom line.
what is did the Malaysian market get COVID spiked, or was it pretty much slow and steady, or was?
Oh, we had a total shutdown here, curfew. You weren't allowed to go out for several weeks. Hospitals were in bad shape. They were filling up, and yeah, we did get quite a lot of fatalities. From me personally, being a grumpy old git, it suited me just great, because I just sat at home and made videos, played with my snakes. It was awesome.
Was there like more interest, like in the US, in ball pythons in Malaysia, like because of that, because people were stuck at home, or did it not respond the same way, like in your like local market?
The local markets has never been a large market. I look at the market here as being Southeast Asia, so that would include Indonesia, Philippines, Korea, Hong Kong, all of those type of places. Australia's out because they don't allow anything in or anything out. Their licensing and permits are very, very strict. So our market has never been large as a country, but Southeast Asia as a region is very big.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. And you're mostly selling like within the region, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's very cool. How's Puerto Rican market doing right now?
That's something that I wanted to actually mention, because something that I've always said in a lot of my videos when we do the collaboration is that in Puerto Rico, I consider it's a virgin territory, because it's a small territory. It's a small island. It's not really that large. It's 100 by 35. Because it's a small area, the market or the demand is not as much, but I'm still moving snakes. The demand is no different than it is in Malaysia or in the United States, where snakes are not flying off, but I'm still moving snakes. And the reason why is that I feel that that I can move and I can actually continue doing what I'm doing is the breeding. It's all about the breeding. And when I say about this is you have to breed something that you like, that you don't mind if it's sitting in your rack for a year or 2 years. Eventually it will move, because these are basically, you're breeding holdbacks. And if you're breeding holdbacks, you're creating a passion for what you're working with so much that it's like basically driving down a freeway and you see a billboard for a McDonald's, for a McFlurry. And as you keep driving and you keep seeing that same billboard as you go down, one of the exits, the first McDonald's you're going to see, you're going to stop off and you're going to buy a McFlurry because you see it so many times. And it goes back to basically my holdbacks. I'm so proud of the things that I work with, because I dream of what I want to work with, and I post it so many times. Because of that, I'm doing that billboard effect with the McFlurry. I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm posting all of my holdbacks, and eventually someone's going to reach out to me and say, listen, I like what you post. It's real beautiful. Do you ship? And by chance, yes, I do ship. Or locally here, someone actually asked for it, and I can actually move on to it. And that actually helps me work with the demand because I'm not actually trying to run like a puppy mill. I'm not overworking myself with a lot of things and then having so many byproducts that I get frustrated because I'm not moving them. And then I start blaming the market.
Mhm.
So basically to beat that, I make sure that whatever that I'm working with is something that I want to work with personally. And then, if it moves, it moves. If it doesn't, it just works my future projects that I want to work more ahead along the line.
Did Morph Market ever fix the Puerto Rico not being
They
part of
did.
the U.S. problem? Oh, we did it. It only took them
They
3 years.
did. They did. I mean, like I can't remember. I had one person that was very, very vocal, backing me up. Unfortunately, no one here locally was doing it, and that kind of got upset. But actually, someone in the States actually saw what I was talking about, and they saw that it was neglect, that it wasn't actually addressed. But thankfully, it's been fixed, and a lot of people here locally that use More Market now they can actually show their listings equally like everyone else. So, it's thankfully it's been addressed and it's been fixed.
Well, I know it's good for you guys, but it looked good on my Morph Market when it said like I export to, like I'm an international guy, and I'm like
Yeah,
I ship to Puerto Rico. It's not a big deal, but I'm
yeah.
exporting to Puerto Rico.
And a lot of people worried thinking that we need CITES down here, so it made
Yeah.
it a little bit more, it actually hurt us a lot. And I remember one time 3 years ago, John Lehman actually called me and he floated the idea about doing that by regions. And I actually told him, listen, it's not going to work. If you do that, you're basically going to stigmatize where we are. And a lot of people are going to avoid, doing any type of business with us because they think it's more complicated than it actually is.
I had the same conversation with John about here. Just to answer Peter's question there, I don't, but ARP does. ARP is a licensed breeder, and he ships snakes internationally, legally, with CITES permits and all the paperwork. It's taken a long time to get that worked out here, but I don't, ARP does.
Yeah, we never do anything illegal here ever.
Yeah, no one works in a train station and smuggles anything for us here, Peter.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah. And Kai says hello to everyone.
Hi, man.
Hey, Kai.
Hey, Kai, how you doing, mate?
And Stephen, maybe Courtney are also here, which maybe you know them now.
Wait, let's go back to shipping real quick. So I've shipped to Puerto Rico. It's not a big deal. Just put that out there. I mean, it's get a vet certificate and ship it. That's the
right.
wait,
It's easier than
wait.
shipping to Canada, and people are very comfortable in the U.S.
Wait, Shay, you got to give a shout out. Who did you ship to?
Ron.
Oh, all right, Ron. Do you know about the zoo that was shut down? I'm sure there's only so many zoos. There's like one.
There's only one.
Yeah. Did you get
Small
some
island.
of the animals? I heard some of them were in California from like a friend, and he had some ball pythons. Do you want to like share that story? Because it's kind of crazy because the snakes all had to be relocated, and some of them came to the U.S.
I don't think that they have ball pythons in that zoo because I knew they had a lot of reticulated and they had Burmese ball pythons, if they had any, because I actually went to the zoo about maybe 10, 12 years ago when it actually was a zoo. But unfortunately, there was a lot of animals because they changed, because originally the person that was administrating the zoo was the local university here of Puerto Rico. And before that, it was a government run. And obviously, they just stepped back and they weren't actually working with any animals. I mean, the biggest news was when they actually shipped out Bindi, which was the elephant, from here.
Right, she was alone.
Yeah, and besides anything else or the snakes, all I know of, the only snakes that I've actually seen there were larger ones, nothing like ball pythons. And if there was,
So I've seen pictures of the ball pythons, and boas, like imperators, like not obviously your native
BCIs. They were basically BCIs and a few berms and stuff like that, but nothing more than that, because unfortunately with illegal trade, most of the snakes that were either confiscated or caught in the wild would end up if not with Fish and Wildlife, that basically they had like a separate area, and then we all know what happens when it ends up there.
Right.
They get a nail to the head.
Right. There's a debate in the chat if Courtney is first or Shane or Steven. So you'll have to settle that in the ring, I guess.
For the record, I was the first one. I was here before Jessica was. I was here to a black blank screen at 6:30. So I was the first of the first
until the last minute.
Man, that's fun. So, Rob, what are you like? Are you making stuff for export? Do you feel like, or are you making stuff for personal interest, or most of your production is sold locally? Like,
I'm a hobby breeder, so officially I do not sell. I have swapped a couple of snakes with people, but I have a close association with ARP constrictors. So one of the aims of my channel was to promote ARP constrictors and put Malaysia on the map. So he is the licensed breeder. He's the guy that will export snakes with permits, etc., etc. I don't. I'm just a hobby breeder, a big hobby breeder, but just a hobby breeder.
Mm-hmm. I always wondered if like your cost of production is cheaper because you're not running electricity and you're on ambient, and maybe the snakes like it better because it's more like where they're from anyway. So you have better production hypothetically. And so like it would be okay to export them and it would still be cheaper than, a Wisconsin produced in the tundra and it barely wants to breed.
The snakes are not the issue. The shipping costs are the issue. So for instance, for us, we can't ship one snake. It's just not cost effective. So
right.
We are trying to break into the international market, but it requires consignments. So once a year, maybe ARP is trying to get a situation where he can ship 30 or 40 snakes to the US or to the UK or to other areas, but certainly one snake, not cost effective. Couldn't do it.
Andrew, thanks for the $2 super chat. Thank you. And he's a member now too. Hopefully I will be a good host. I don't know. Oh man. All right. Any other thoughts on Rich and maybe that part, since we're sort of we drifted a little bit?
I miss the guy, that's for sure. My thoughts on it are, I wish he didn't delete all the content on his channel because, like I said, even regardless of the 4 Horsemen stuff, I would use his videos and like Rob's videos for genetics and Richard's videos for like the brand new ball python people. I'd just send them a link. How do I take care of this thing if I buy a snake? Watch this video from Rich because he can explain it way better than me and breaks it down easy. He had a good channel, man. I think he should have left everything up and running. That's my thoughts. Hot take.
I think he felt he couldn't.
Even though because he was getting out?
I won't say any more than that, but when he decided to get out, it was total. Out completely.
Yeah, there's some sort of like, I don't know, emotional turmoil being like, I failed, even though it's not a failure to try and then, choose to do something else with your time. I don't think that's a failure at all. It would be like worrying about the sunk cost fallacy of it all. But yeah, I think some people, it hurts them more to have given up or whatever.
I can't say that basically, it's kind of like a give up thing. I mean, like each person, they're masters of their own, path and their own journey. And who are we to judge, what decision that they make because we're not in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I have to say that I'm very grateful, for basically the time that we had. Like I said, I still cherish the messages because there's some hilarious back and forth between all 4 of us, even before we started, collaborating together. We were basically, from there, we even took it over to Instagram just to continue it. And it was a progression of basically, I guess, the ultimate demise of actually, total blackout of that. But the time that, that we did have, and at least on my part, I have to say that I'm very, very grateful for, for everything that each one of them actually, contributed to my progression within this. And not only the hobby wise, but basically as a person, having to say that I had the best time actually collaborating with these three great guys.
Um, we're talking about a person that's not here now, and he can't speak for himself. But from a personal perspective, with my channel, I would say that I've been extremely lucky in that I have not experienced any social media negativity. My channel supporters have been fantastic. They add value to the channel in their comments. It is an enjoyable bit of work to produce the videos, and certainly for the amount of videos that Richard produced, that's a tremendous amount of work. But just remember that there's an awful lot goes on in the background that you don't see up front or is apparent from the videos. And I would say that it's that part of social media that puts people off.
Yeah.
From my perspective, it hurts when somebody says something nasty for no reason, or there's negativity, and often a lot of that is private. It's not upfront on the YouTube channel.
Right. Like you could spend 8 hours doing something to the best of your ability with like an earnest attempt to help someone, and they're like, "You're boring." Like it's something's like that, and they're like, "Okay, I don't know. You could have kept it to yourself." Also, but they say it much meaner than that. You're right.
Well, I always used to tell Richard that greatness has no time for distraction. Do not let it distract you. You just have to ignore it.
Right.
I'm still on that quote, Rob. Greatness has no time for distraction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hot take right there. Yeah, I want to say though, I'm extremely grateful for everything we did too. When I joined the Four Horsemen, I was like just starting my YouTube journey. I didn't know how to do YouTube at all, and I learned. Like my channel shaped the way it is from doing videos with the Four Horsemen. Like I learned I'm not a Rob Bearclaw. I can't sit there and do all the genetics and stuff. That's just not my strength. So then when people ask me for that stuff, I send them to Rob's channel, like go over there. He's got all that info for you. I'm not the guy.
You underestimate yourself, Shane.
Yeah, and Rob is still quite active. Like if people don't know Rob, or I don't know why you wouldn't know Rob, but if you don't, you can go check him out. And then Ron, your channel is a little less active, but you just moved.
Yeah,
So you're going to get back into it?
It's still a process for me, to tell you the truth. I kind of feel that basically, your craft only can be representative if you believe in it, to the point that you have to have passion for it. And even though I do have passion, I mean, like there's things that actually took away a lot of passion for me. And not to get too much in deep with that, but I'm still actually rediscovering myself all over again. And I'm actually trying to build up my own personal journey. And once I'm a bit more stable, you'll see a lot more content from me. I'm more active on Instagram. I'm really, really active on Instagram. I'm really active on TikTok. But actually to sit in front of a camera and actually talk into details about a project or anything, I'm still not there yet. So I don't want to cheat someone out and bore the heck out of a person out of anything, and give it this justice to what this hobby actually means. And I leave it up to other people that actually can demonstrate it passionately enough, and then give the hobby the good representation it deserves.
Peter misses you, buddy.
he's kissing up. I mean, like
Peter has always been one of the greatest supporters of the Four Horsemen.
oh yeah. I mean, like Peter's incredible. I mean, like Peter. If anything, I have to say stuff like that. He's a junior Four Horseman.
Yeah.
Oh,
I kind of told a little bit of the story backstage, but I was introduced to Peter Snake's channel from the rest of the Four Horsemen, and and then I've known Peter ever since. So thank you guys.
and thanks, Peter. He's
Yeah.
a real team player. Yeah, I mean, Ron or Rob, you can come on the podcast anytime. I talk about snakes all the time, and it's like pretty easy. But I don't, like if you don't want the burden of like having to get the energy to do it yourself, that's what lives I think are good for. It's just like
I find it very easy to talk about snakes, but this podcast has been talking about people, which is a little bit harder for me.
Well,
we can move on to snakes.
Yeah, I got to tell you, this is the funny thing. I mean, like, every time that I go into a different breeder's local setup here in Puerto Rico, I'll have an issue back home because I'll be there hours and hours and hours, and we're just talking about projects and snakes and stuff like that, and I love it so much. Just like Rob says, I mean, I love talking about snakes. You talk about a specific project or whatever, and you'll have me, and I will not shut up, and I guess it's that contagious.
Yeah.
It's a wonderland every time I visit ARP and go through his racks, and I have full access to everything that he's doing, and we just sit and talk projects for hours. I'm exactly the same.
Right. Talking shop is like how it's an actual snake person. Because you can't get him away from the water cooler to actually go do any work, right? So, Ron, what projects are you really excited about? What has lit a fire under your butt that made you want to buy an ARS rack?
Oh gosh, I never gave up on working multi-recessives. That's basically my pride and joy, and it actually it shows the dedication of actually what the actual ball python has to offer, because it doesn't end. I remember when I first started working with ball pythons, it was all about stacking as many codons as you can, just getting all those different combinations in there. But it came to a point that you start losing it, and you had no idea what you had. Now turn it up a little bit and make it more challenging and work recessives into that, and then work multi-recessives. One of the projects that I'm super, super excited is one of my dream projects was obviously the Dreamsicle. And now I've hit it so many times that I'm tweaking it out with different combinations. And that's a multi-recessive for me. Actually, it's a double recessive, but now I'm working with quad heads. Besides that, I'm also working multi-recessives monsoons. I have double recessives monsoon desert ghosts and double recessive monsoons clowns. I want to tweak that a little bit more and put lavender in there. I'm working multi-recessives with sunsets. Clowns, I mean, like clowns, it's I just hit the desert ghost clown the other day. I hit a few of them, as a matter of fact, and it's the end result, not even the end result, because there is no end, but basically those projects fuels the continuation that I have to actually want to get that invested with the ARS or anything else, because it's part of the passion that I have of breeding.
Rob, what are you excited about?
Again, multi-recessives. I find the genetics very. It's more interesting from my perspective. It's not a value thing. It's just putting together those combinations and double and triple recessives. The odds are just get harder and harder and harder. But yeah, I'm with Ron again there, working different genes, carefully selected combinations of genes in your gene snack to make a pretty snake, not just putting as many genes in there as possible. And I actually find working with the different combinations, allelic combinations, is very exciting. I'm big into clowns, and working with the spider complex, let's call it the spot nose complex rather than the spider complex, so we don't get any negative vibes. But the spot nose complex and all the associated genes with it and the way that they work allelically is just awesome. That's really where my main interest lies right now.
Shane, what are you excited about?
G-stripe clowns, baby. That's but to segue off what they're talking about, so along the way, I'm building all these double heads and now triple heads. It's like it never ends, because my original goal was G-stripe clowns, but now I'm adding hypo and desert ghost in there with my head army of females, so it's like it never ends. It's just a ongoing process, but I gotta like build the females now so my odds are better later, and just keep going. And then, like, as far as any of the other genes, I really like pattern disruptors. So the spot nose complex, confusion, stuff like that. I like all those crazy, wonky patterns, I like it just crazy. So,
did you see the Saxon?
No, I need to watch that video. I haven't watched it yet.
I didn't really get it. I mean, I like ball pythons, but like, I was actually excited. I was like, it's different enough. And it's adding a ton of pattern, and it's fighting pattern reducers a lot. So check out Balls to Use new Saxon video. He was like, yeah, I was going to get out of it. And then I saw this, and I'm like, look at that. Because it's fighting so hard. So it'll make a high pattern Kiki or whatever. So Rob and Ron, check that one out.
Yeah, going back to what Shane was actually talking about, if you skip a year for whatever reason, you're going to hit yourself so hard in the back when you're seeing the progression of, what other people are making, and then you feel like you missed that boat, and it's not easy to catch up. So it's kind of the main reason why, there's always going to be something new that's going to pop out that's going to catch your eye. And you don't want to be at that point that basically when you're drawn back in, and then you feel that it's even hard to jump back in and start up again. When you're seeing how far it is because you took like a season or two off, because that really will set you back, especially how far anyone actually got into this. If you are already working, if you're starting out, I mean, like, you're in the best time to start out, because we've done a lot of the work. A lot of breeders done a lot of work, and there's a lot of variety that you can actually choose from and to work with, and then from there build up your own passion for a specific project.
I think for us out here in Southeast Asia, we struggle to get the latest and greatest morphs. We don't have all these new genes available, and it's very, very expensive to make an import every year. We can't do it. ARP imported 15 years ago, and then we just did another import 2 years ago. So we spend a lot of our time optimizing what we've got rather than trying to chase all the new genes.
If I could just add on to that.
Sure.
If I could add on to that, Rob, and you hit it on the nail on something, and something that I've noticed specifically coming from the Asian market, because they're limited with a lot of projects that they can have, they're more in turn to have to actually line breed a lot of projects. That's a lot of things a lot of people, they do not do. And they're missing out on the benefit of what that actually has. Rob hit it on the nail with that, because he produces these incredible Iron Man clutches. Yeah. I mean, like, and that's basically, it's general and cheap. But because he has that project and he's worked it so much, it actually, he fine-tuned it even more. It's like the representation I personally feel what Ozzy did with the high intensity orange dream. Yeah. That's exactly what's happening over there. And even if they're not adding on new projects, they're holding on to the ones that they have, and they're building out the full potentials that those combos actually have. So I have to applaud, a lot of things that Rob actually produces. I love the things that he makes out there.
Never underestimate how much of a difference quality line breeding can make. We've been forced into it to some extent, but some of the stuff that ARP produces, fairly simple combinations that just look so much better than anything that you see on Morph Market. And there's a reason for that. Quality in, quality out. That's our motto.
Right.
Yeah.
People always want to buy cheap snakes. No, buy the best looking snake that you can afford, because that's the base you're going to start from and you're going to build on it. You know, people hate on pastel. We have some amazing pastels out here that don't brown out. It's amazing what you can do when you can't get all the latest and greatest genes. So you're not mixing all the genes. You're maximizing and making the best of the genes that you have. I actually watched a video with Justin, and Justin said he wasn't into line breeding. He's more into mixing the new genes. And I thought, well, that, first of all, that's not exactly true. And I don't believe that you believe that. But I was surprised to say that Justin focuses on mixing the right gene stacks. If that's really what he's doing, he's missing a lot.
Yeah, the U.S. market's very fast to turn sentiment. So like, it's almost like you breed it this year, good money. Next year, it moves on. It feels like from like what's like a good gene. That's why like we forget genes that we like, and then someone rediscovers them because nobody even hardly worked it. Just like the sentiment quickly moved on because people are just stackers deep down inside. So I'm almost jealous. Maybe I'll move to Malaysia. It sounds better.
Well, I do see a trend in the industry. Everybody's tripping over themselves to name a new gene and get their name on a new gene. We don't have that luxury out here, so it's not a factor for us. When a new gene comes out, I look at a new gene and think, well, that just looks like something else that's very similar. What can I make with that I can't already make? And if the answer's nothing, I'm not interested. When a new gene comes out, if it's different enough and distinctive enough that I can actually see what it does in combinations, then I'm interested. A lot of these genes, you put them into combos and you don't see them again. They're hidden. They do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Is there a gene that you don't have in Malaysia that you want to get on the next?
No, where do I start the list? Where do I start my list? Again, going back to the spot nose complex, we don't have chocolate out here, and we are going to bring in chocolate. I think that's essential. Ron, this will be near and dear to you with the chocolate DGs. We're working DG into as much as we possibly can, and my racks are full of double and triple hets. And the advantage of working closely with ARP is that we can actually work together. So we can swap our hets out, which shortcuts the process. I've always got snakes that he wants. He's always got snakes that I want. So that works out really well.
Yeah.
I can tell you a gene that I don't want, and this is going to cause some consternation. Sunset.
That was a drama on Facebook today, as a matter of fact, about that. It's funny that you mentioned it.
Well, I saw Always Evolving Pythons, the first Sunset DGs, and I looked at it and thought, why did you make that?
I will tell you a combo that will change your opinion on Sunset, and that's the Lavender Sunset.
I think there are always certain gene stacks that work well with any combination. It's just a question of finding it. And for me, I haven't seen anything where somebody's added something to Sunset and I've gone, wow, that works for me.
Did you see the Calico Sunset?
Yeah.
All right. I feel like that is the most transformative. But then because there's like little like burned out spots of white. but maybe that
We don't have sunset out here, by the way, so that probably biases my views.
that'll be in the next care package with chocolate. We'll just fly over and drop a little.
We should send some out
parachute.
there to you so you and ARP can line breed it and find the right stacks, and then we'll get some back from you.
Now,
Mhm.
let me ask Rob. I got to ask you a question because I'm very fine-tuned with the Asian market because I'm seeing the incredible expos that they have over there, especially the ones that they have in shopping malls. I'm so impressed that I see in shopping malls, people are doing the shopping and they have expos of reptiles, and it's not basic reptiles. These are reptiles that I'm like, oh my God. I mean, like, how did they get those combinations? Is it because it's closer to you to actually piggyback off of them and ship to you, or is there embargo from actually getting something from China or Japan?
The problem for us is bureaucracy. So you have the import side and you have the export side. So when ARP needs to export, he needs to get all the export paperwork in line, and it has to match up with the import paperwork at the other side. And if one of the administrations is a little bit slow and it misses the window, you start all over again. You start right back at the beginning of the process for your export permits and doing the import permits at the other side. So it's difficult.
That'd be
Not
frustrating.
impossible, but it's difficult. Yeah, and I don't think that our market is quite as advanced in that regard as countries that are more used to importing, exporting stuff.
Okay.
It's possible. We're getting there.
Yeah, are you referring to like Korean and Taiwanese? Like it's mostly Koreans that do the like little pop-up small expos.
Well, as a matter of fact, because I'm also subscribed to David Suarez or David Su's videos,
Yeah.
and he hops on over to Indonesia off and on, and
they
I
do
see
it too.
they do incredible expos over there. As a matter of fact, Justin, I mean, like I was hating on his video that he went exactly to Thailand and they had an expo over there. And what I love about his video, and I commented on his Instagram about that I was so jealous because that's on my bucket list of the places that I want to actually go to actually see a vending at that magnitude, is that they actually give trophies for a pattern, not a specific morph, but the representation of how it looks. So you get trophies for that. Then you get a trophy for a specific gene, and then you get a trophy for something else. And you see tables of that. I mean, like it's so. I kind of see that actually motivates even more the hobby, and because I don't know what the distance is between Indonesia and Malaysia, but because I do see off and on that they're jumping off or on to that island. I was just curious about acquiring something from that point.
It's less than 2 hours by plane from here to Jakarta. Very easy. I've visited David. I've been fortunate enough to live close enough to have visited David many times. He's a good friend, and yes, he makes some awesome stuff. Absolutely awesome.
I don't know if this is a trigger, but Robert asked Rob about vanilla cream clowns? Question mark.
I like the allelic combos, and I have been trying for several years now to get a vanilla cream or a vanilla scream clown, and I've missed it every single time. I actually have a super vanilla female clown in my holdback racks, which was produced as part of that project, but I actually got two vanillas rather than vanilla and fire. ARP has been trying for 11 years to hit a VPI exanthic clown, and he made 3 this season. So finally, we are getting there with some of these, both double recessives and recessives with allelic combos, which are effectively just as hard to make. So I have clutches in the incubator now, which, fingers crossed, I'm going to get my vanilla cream cloud this time around.
Do you think the market should start valuing viable homozygotes that are of an incomplete dominant gene the same as recessives instead of like treating them like, in some cases they're more expensive. Like in the US, a homozygous blackhead is more expensive than, a pied, right?
Okay, well, I'm gonna jump in here from a genetic perspective, and we talk about dominant, incomplete dominant, and recessive genes. For me, they're all the same. There are 2 slots available in a diploid animal that has a set of chromosomes from mum and a set of chromosomes from dad. So whether it's recessive, whether it's dominant, or whether it's incomplete dominant, you can get 1 copy, heterozygous, or 2 copies, homozygous. And the homozygous form, whether it's a recessive or an incomplete dominant, is just as hard to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, for me, in terms of breeding them and the effort that it takes, it's just as hard to get that combination or the allelic combinations when you're working with the same complex and trying to mix 2 allelic genes. Effectively, they're the superform as well because they occupy the same locus. So yes, I think we undervalue superforms.
Yeah, I agree and I think there's something psychological going on here, and that's why people will like pretend something's recessive when it's not, and to make the prices different. But like, if we just stopped thinking about it in terms of recessive is valuable and just be like, is it heterozygote or is it homozygote, and at what locus and what's filling them, then we can more like empirically value the animal's difficulty to produce. But I don't know if we're ready for that. The ball python hobby is, I don't know.
I remember a video
Gentle.
with the 4 Horsemen where we talked about het markers and whether they're a real thing. And for me, as a scientist, if you have 1 copy of a genetic mutation residing in a locus, how can it not have an influence? Of course it has an influence. You might not be able to see it, but it has an influence. You're not looking properly if you don't see it. Every single het will express some way or another. It's just that we don't often recognize. We'd far rather send off and do a $60 test than actually look with our eyes and do some work.
That was a burn, everybody. You've all been burned. Me too.
Well, again, we don't have genetic.
I love Rob.
And again, it comes back to when you start to stack genes. If you can't see what the genes are doing, if you can't recognize them, and you need to send them off for genetic testing, hets accepted. Yes, I accept that when you're working with hets, double hets, triple hets, you need the genetic test to reduce the odds and make sure you're pairing the right snake. But if you're making combinations where you can't see the genes that are in there, why are they in there? What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gotta say, as a person that actually been building up a het army and multi-hets here, I've actually seen this, and we've talked about this so many times, that the influence of the pattern of the color that we see when we have these holdbacks. And obviously, it's not easy hitting on those multi-visual recessives. For example, just to go back with the Desert Ghost Clown that I hit, I actually used 6 different females, and using 6 females, I only hit it off on 1 of them, and they were all 100% double or even triple heads. Only 1 female actually was able to produce that out of 6 females. Now imagine a person that only has a pair, and they don't hit that 1 season, then they have to wait the next season, and if that female reabsorbs, or for whatever reason the male doesn't lock, or for whatever, that's an extra year he has to wait. So that actually contributes why I have to invest on more racks, because I have so many holdbacks to try to actually get to the end results, or not even end results, because I don't want to actually use that term, but at least with the path of what I'm trying to produce. Going back to the question that I saw about the Desert Ghost, when the conflict of it came out about RGI and the results that they were coming out with, there was a panic that everyone had that was working with the projects. But something that I just figured is, how has it changed how we were breeding before that discovery was made. It hasn't. So it just
We never
basically
even
goes
noticed.
back.
We got the genetic tests. We never even noticed.
Yeah, but it was just basically, I guess it made a lot of people nervous about what they were working, and
Mhm.
even if you have 100% hits, this is something we talked about so many times. You could miss, the odds could be so bad against you that you won't hit it, and it goes back to how persistent you are with that pairing, or how many females you have to go to actually get what you're trying to get. It has nothing to do with the DGA, BCD, or whatever the outfits they want to add into it. It hasn't changed the past how it's been worked before. So
This takes me back to line breeding. It came as absolutely no surprise to me to learn that some of the genes that we work with are actually polygenic, and there are other genes involved that influence the way that an animal looks, depending upon what else is in that animal. And that's where quality line breeding comes in. So, for instance, a good quality pastel is probably being influenced by other genes that we don't know about in that stack. And that's why Ozzy produces such fantastic orange dreams, because his animals over time have acquired that necessary gene pool that's invisible in the background to produce those quality animals. So DG, I actually did a video on the DGA, DGB, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for RGI to complete the picture with DGC, because what they published was an advancement, but not the whole story. And the video that I did actually used a 16 square Punnett square, because it's actually 4x4, so a 16 square, and I actually worked out what the odds were for producing visuals, and it's about the same as if it was a 4x4 square. It's about the same as if it was a simple recessive. There are more combinations involved, and without genetic testing you wouldn't know what you got, but in terms of your pairings and how many visuals you're going to get, it didn't make much difference. Now, when are they going to release the rest of that data? I think they have enough work backed up now, so job done, to last them for years and years. And if you're paying for that data, fair dues, you get that data. I'm sure many people that have paid for that testing already know the complete picture. They have an advantage. Genetic testing out here is not available, so we're never going to get that complete picture. So I'm just falling back on, we never knew about this before, so how does it change what I'm going to do? It doesn't.
exactly, and it goes back to the example that one time me and Shane went back and forth about sonogram machines. Everyone was breeding before sonograms. I mean, like,
Ultrasound.
what changed? Ultrasounds. I'm sorry, ultrasounds. What changed?
Don't have
What it makes is basically it's an additional tool. But before ultrasounds, I was still breeding. I was still producing clutches. So the same thing with the genetic testing. What were we doing before genetic testing? Proving it out. You know, um, I guess that basically it's it's trying to make it a little bit more complex, and I guess that's a big scare for a lot of people, because now it's getting a little bit more technical than what what it really needs to be.
Something I've like been wondering about is if it's actually like linkage. It actually really is simple recessive and not polygenic, and it just, they're not sorting independently, and they think B or C or something is relevant. But I think I've seen the reverse now, where like a homozygous B was visual and not A. But since A seemed to predominate, I was just like, I don't know if Rob, you had thought about that.
Yeah, the database is incomplete. And as I say, we don't have the whole story. But from what I can gather from what RGI have released, the locus for DGA and the locus for DGB is actually on a separate chromosome. So when you produce your haploid cells during gamete production, they have to work independently. They don't go together. So when the chromosome produces the haploid gametes for DGA, that's a completely different process to DGB.
All right, it's far enough apart.
You can get all the various permutations, and without genetic testing, you wouldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
yes,
I mean, like
that homozygous B, homozygous A doesn't produce a visual without something else being there. And they've mentioned DGC, but that's as far as it's gone. They haven't actually finished the story yet. And I don't know that they ever will.
well, we all in the US anyway sent in like 2 free samples. So Shane and I did it with pictures, like to confirm that it was
I did that also.
Oh.
I still haven't got anything back.
Right. That they haven't run any of them yet, as far as I'm aware. They're waiting until
No, because
I
now
don't know,
the free
the
ones,
end of days or whatever.
they've got plenty of people that are paying for it. So your free ones are at the back of the queue.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but the thing is, it hasn't changed how I'm working my project.
No.
I just got on the bus because it was free, and maybe I have something to actually show, but it hasn't changed how I'm working, and I'm still working Desert Ghost profusely. And I'm hitting a lot of Desert Ghosts, as a matter of fact. I did visual to visual this season, and I got all visuals, so I didn't get that unexpected result of half of the clutch not being visual. I didn't get that. I did that, as a matter of fact, even before the news broke, because I wanted to see what I have more to actually offer. And then when I did head to heads, something that helped me out, as a matter of fact, and I don't know if it was just pure luck out of the odds, was using cryptic in the combination. And out of that, I don't know how that made a difference, but because I used cryptic in one of my pairings, she was the one that gave me more Desert Ghost visuals than the other ones that were non-cryptic. I don't know what that has to do with it, but I just noticed that in my pairings.
Like maybe she's homo.
Sorry. I have heard of that link with cryptic before, but I don't have any insight into how that works.
Well, I think some of these animals that we think aren't visuals are like homozygous at one position, het at another position, and het at the third hypothetical position. And so then they look like hets, but they're actually super hets, right? Like more likely to make visuals. So
yeah.
And I think I might have produced one of those. I sent Jessica pictures, but I got a DG clutch, and I have my obvious DGs, and then I have an obvious one that's not DG, and then I have this one that looks like it's 3/4 of it's DG.
Right, I'm like,
so I'm waiting for it to I want it to like shed 3 or 4 times before I make the final decision on if it's DG or not. But it's definitely somewhere in between the normal and the DG looking. You know, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a super het. Yeah, I like that. Super het.
Well, I've got a bunch of double hets for various Desert Ghost double recessive projects, hypo, clowns. We've got quite a few that are going to be coming up in the next year. So it'll be interesting to see what the results are from that, because we're working completely visually. We won't have genetic testing. So again, I go back to keeping quality records of your pairings is going to become more and more important as we go down this multi-recessive route. You can still do it without genetic testing if your records are good.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody knows this, but like charcoal and I think it's amel and corn snakes are like really closely linked. So it's very hard to hit the double. I think it's called a blizzard or something like that, an avalanche. So like, but you can still hit it eventually if you get everything to line up just right. But it's like 1 in 200. But charcoal or corn snake people are nuts, so they'll go for it all day. So we'll find that in ball pythons eventually is something that is hard to hit, even harder to hit.
I have noticed with some allelic combinations, again, this touches on what Ron was mentioning. Allelic combinations theoretically should give 50-50, right? 50% one, 50% the other. I found that's not necessarily the case. A particular snake will throw a lot more of one of the genes than the other, and I don't know why.
I don't know either. Maybe I don't know. Like, they don't have very different chromosomes. They're not that like physically different. So even if there's a mutation, there's not like a large change. So it wouldn't be like the gamete would weigh differently or something, or have a fitness difference.
Maybe the fit at the locus is not quite as good as we think it is. So, for instance, if you have a cinnamon enchi and it throws 90% cinnamon and only 10% enchi, it could be that there is actually a small difference between the way that gene fits at the locus. I don't know. I'd have to ask a geneticist about that. But I have noticed that it very rarely does a snake give you 50-50 when it's an allelic combination. It tends to throw more of one than the other.
Shane or Ron, have you noticed like a bias?
No, I haven't worked with too many ALS combos myself. I just don't have them in my arsenal. So I do know some snakes. Like, so I had a GHI pied, and like 90% of everything he produced was GHI. I'm flooded with GHI right now. I thought that was strange myself. I'm like, and multiple clutches throughout the year. It's like almost all GHI. I don't know why. He wasn't a super. He did make ones that weren't GHI, but yeah, that's the only thing I've noticed weird in my collection. Interesting
comment from Odds Gods there about the odds being per egg rather than per clutch. We're actually confusing genetics and statistics here. There are two processes operating, and yes, there is dependency. If you have had, from a statistical perspective, not a genetic perspective, if you've had 4 eggs that are 1, the chances of it's like heads and tails. If you throw 4 heads, the chances of you throwing a tails next time is still 50-50. But over time, it should even out. So over years and years of breeding and many, many clutches, it should, from a statistical perspective, even out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess that's why
genetics is biasing that. It's the way genetics work that means that doesn't actually always happen.
I guess that's why a lot of people actually jump on projects or give up on certain projects, because they didn't get the results that they expected by what they heard, what the odd calculator they would get from Morph Market or Genetic Wizard, and they were expecting those results. But it goes back to basically the continuation of working that same project. I mean, like, it's the ball python, and this is the biggest reason that it fascinates me to the point that I'm still working with this, because each season it changes. It's not a set in stone procedure of the results that you're going to end up with. So knowing that it's going to be challenging every time when you're working anything, not knowing what the results are until you actually it starts pipping, and you could see it even with that, not until after a few sheds you still even know what you have. And that's the fascinating thing about that actually gives growth to this.
If you always knew what you were going to get, there'd be no excitement over the eggs hatching.
Right.
Mm. All right, chat. Do you have any more questions? We have maybe like 15 more minutes. Tops. Adam mentions the leopard gecko combo that was like the corn snake where they're linked.
Yeah.
So that you can hit it, but it's hard. So it ends up being like you make 200 geckos to hit one type of thing.
I knew they had one with the Murphy's patternless, but I couldn't remember what the other morph was. But
yeah, I think that, to me, that's the most exciting part about actually sequencing the ball python stuff. It's not necessarily like, solving the riddle of are your heads pos heads or whatever. It's just like learning what they are, what genes are actually broken or modified or misfolded or whatever, like the proteins eventually. And then we could actually like understand everything better, more intimately, instead of just being like, yeah, it's purple. Yeah. Purple plus purple equals more purple. I don't know. Like, it's much more interesting now because we actually like have a chance to think about, and then what genes downstream are being affected. So maybe we don't like in boas, almost all of them have like the incomplete dominants have a lethal super, because whatever pattern mutation also affects, muscle tissue too. And so you end up having like musculature deformities. So whenever we actually sequence and figure out those, we'll know which ones are like the worst, like which ones, maybe we should, from an ethical standpoint, not breed at all. Uh-oh. Spicy hot topic. Mark asks, the nanny to carnage name change that was a controversial
I'm
topic a couple
sorry.
weeks ago.
I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, it is a big issue because there's a big breeder that actually is very, very invested with that project. Um, I gotta say that to change a project because the name was not, was hurting the project itself and making it more. It didn't sit well with me. I actually, I got my personal opinion about that, but it's a personal opinion.
Go ahead,
It's
let
not
it
helping the
out. We want to hear
project.
it.
I mean, like you're trying to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You're trying to reinvent the wheel. You're trying to put excitement in a project that already exists by changing the name. I'm not going to pull hairs on that. So, but yeah,
Carnage is a good name, but for the
I
nanny
know I love the
project,
name. I love the name. I mean, like it's kick ass if you ask me and stuff like that. But I mean, like as a matter of fact, it's an upgrade for that sissy name it had before. But
maybe it should have been the gene formerly known as nanny, and then just make a symbol like Prince did,
yeah, but the thing is that you're opening Pandora's box to criticism because we're already seeing that with a lot of genes in Europe that are being called a certain line when we already know what it is. I don't want to call out anyone specifically on that, but that's always been an issue that, for example, I'm just going to put a random gene out there, fire. You'll have fire, and then someone else will call it something else, and then you have spider, and someone else will call it something else, and then you'll have Enchi and someone's going to call it something else, and they're playing with the names. They're just sticking with it. If it's good or if it's a bad name, don't change the name. I mean, like, don't try to reinvent something that's already there. If it works great in whatever combo, leave it as is with the name it is. You're going to confuse people that's already invested in the project, and you're going to confuse people that are thinking of jumping into it.
Yeah, but this is the ball python world. That's what we do. We confuse people. I mean, that's just the name of the game.
I'd be quite okay with calling genes A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah, it actually would. I mean, for marketing reasons, it probably wouldn't work out. But for like trying to convey the actual genotype of the animal, it would be much more clear what's happening. I've already seen a super carnage on Morph Market, and because Morph Market hasn't accepted the name change, it's like super nanny, like in the tag.
That's the thing. That's the
It's
thing.
already
You're
confusing. Like,
you're,
what is
you're gonna
it?
confuse. I've been in this for quite a while. Not as long as the other people that are changing the names, but when I saw that name change, is not the name change, but the actual name, I was like, wait a second, what gene am I missing out? I was like, oh, wait a second, it's a nanny. Skip. It doesn't impress me. It doesn't. The name's not going to change what the project does. It just doesn't impress me.
It's also very similar to carnivore, which is this
Leopard.
well, maybe a version of leopard, but it's a very similar name. So we have two name changes on two things that are something else, maybe, and then I don't know. And then nanny is probably grim and a couple other granite genes.
Why does nobody genetically test all these new names that come out, like carnivore? Get it tested. Let's see where it fits on the locus. Is it leopard or is it actually something else? That's what we should be using.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
All of these superfluous names, because they all turn out to be the same damn thing.
They probably will.
I think this is going to be a controversial episode.
Except the original name. Would you have to do it like the type specimen is like the first one, sort of like taxonomically, and that's the name you pick? Or is it a popularity contest at that point? or a
I think
council
it's
of
a popular.
elders.
I think it's a popularity concert, if anything.
Yeah, but the
Yeah, I think
popularity,
we need a committee.
right? If we like to go back to the show question, if there was a organizing body that helped run shows that were for giving out prizes for, you know, type and beauty of the specimen, that show could also have breed standards and, you know, figure out naming confusion. They would have a council of elders built in to the organization, but you know, you'd have to get multiple ball python people together and have them agree to even start like a, you know, a breeders club or whatever. Can we do that? Maybe I'll nominate the 3 horsemen to start the breeders club.
I was gonna say that's gonna be a whole nother argument in itself on who's on the committee and everything else. You know. I like that comment you had highlighted though, because that's something that Rob talks about in his videos.
All right, read it.
Rhythm of the room.
Oh yes, the rhythm of the room.
Yeah.
I often think that we, rather than using ultrasound and doing all these genetic testing and stuff, just follow your snakes, observe your snakes, let your snakes tell you where they're at, because the rhythm of the room is a real thing. I sense it every day when I go in the snake room. So for instance, now we're just approaching the wet season, and I've had an early pulse of females that have been building and already laid, and now I'm into a second pulse at the back end of the year as we start to go into the rainy season. And all the snakes tend to get in sync with each other. Once those hormones, the pheromones start to flow, all the snakes get in sync. So for instance, half the year, my males are just really docile and don't really do much. And then once the females start to build at the change of the season, you see all the males switching on and starting to get active and wanting to go out looking for girls. And it's a real thing.
Lindsay asks, Robert, is there any new ball python behavioral experiments you would like to do in the future?
Oh goodness. I guess the whole of my snake room is a behavioral experiment. I do spend a lot of time with my snakes, actually just letting them do their thing. And I think it's a good thing in that, for me, arguments about racks versus terrariums. I've done a series of experiments where I've moved snakes from one environment to the other, albeit within the same room. I've seen snakes become unsettled in both terrariums and in tubs, and it's all to do with their hormone cycles. If you actually watch what the snakes are doing, they will tell you where they're at and what it is that they need in order to get them to settle back down again. So I'm not real big on this racks versus terrariums. You can make them work. My snakes will move seamlessly from one to the other. I wouldn't like to try and breed in a terrarium. It's a lot easier to collect eggs and put them in an incubator if you've got the snakes in a tub. They're just easier to manage. Is that the right thing for the snake? To be honest, if you have a rack system and allow your snakes the freedom to come out when you clean, if they display an interest in coming out, I don't know whether anybody's seen my videos on the free roaming. Mm-hmm. And again, I think that's something that we misinterpret. We spend time trying to enrich our snakes with climbing opportunities and fake vegetation. They're not interested in any of that. They're interested in smell. They're interested in smelling each other. When my snakes free roam, they spend all their time scenting where other snakes have been. Just like the dogs on the neighborhood lamppost, where every single dog will stop at that lamppost and have a pee. My snakes do exactly the same thing. They make a beeline for that paper rack that the other snakes have been on, and they'll leave their little scenting calling card there, and it fascinates the snakes. Climbing stuff is just a way to get to food or to get to males, females. It doesn't really interest the snakes that much. They're interested in each other. They're interested in scent.
Yeah, and the other thing is, because I'm here in Puerto Rico, and this is something that me and Rob we talked about so many times, is that we have similar environments, and we're in opposite time zones, but we have similar time climates. And I've seen a lot of breeders here, and not even breeders, they're accidental breeders, that I call them, that basically they have an aquarium and they basically were cleaning snakes, and they just basically put two snakes together while they were cleaning out the other glass aquarium that they were keeping the other one in. And without them knowing, they had a lock, and then at the end of the year, they had a clutch, and they were like, what am I going to do? And most of the times they just leave it with the snake, and they'll do maternal incubation, or they'll put it in an egg box, and they'll put it in their closet, and they'll incubate at an ambient temperature, and it'll hatch. I've seen that so many times. I've done videos. Yeah, I've had videos. As a matter of fact, I have a separate YouTube channel in Spanish, and I highlighted a breeder that actually breeds out of his closet, and he incubates his eggs out of that closet. No heat tape, no nothing, just with ambient temperature. So if it's something that basic, exactly. It took him, because that was the incredible thing, how long it took the eggs to do their incubation to actually hatch. 75 days, 72 days. It would basically depend, but it was always over 70 days, when we're used to hearing 55 days, 52 days, never ever over 60. But here we're seeing people actually hitting 75 days.
Makes sense. Will says he's sticking with Nanny. He doesn't like Carnage. And then
I'm okay with that.
Says she would love to see a video from Robert about how he keeps through records, organizing the paperwork into feeding, pairing, clutching, labeling, etc.
Interesting, because these days people are pushing computer records, QR codes, etc. I'm still a notebook kind of guy, and in my snake room, I see on the background in Shane's room there, he's got paper clips and stuff, little coloured dots on his tubs. I like that visual. When I walk into the snake room, the coloured tags tell me exactly what's going on in the snake room. I can see at a glance. I don't have to look at my app or anything. Once you reach a certain number of snakes, it becomes very, very daunting to have to input data into software right at the start. I'd need a full-time secretary to do that for me. I can. No, I've whittled down the data that I keep in my notebooks to just the stuff that I will actually refer back to. Most of the records that people keep, they never look at again. Right. We weigh eggs. Why are you weighing eggs? When are you going to use that?
That's something I've never understood. Like, the clutch weighed whatever. What does it matter what the egg weighed when?
I weigh my females after they've laid, so that I can see how they are recovering and where they were at last year when they laid eggs, and I refer back to that number. If I find myself recording data that I never look at again, I stop doing it. Sheds. The only sheds that are important are your pre-lay sheds. I don't record when my snakes have a poo. Right. I never look at that data ever again.
You don't record when you wipe their butt and make sure they're pure. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not into either. What is interesting is like TSK does over record. So they found like lineage based differences in like fecundity and like egg size, clutch size that are like more interesting in like a macro like collection wide scale, but like for like the normal person with 3 snakes, it doesn't matter. Like that's how they know or believe sugar and calico are actually distinct, because there's like fecundity differences.
I'm sure if you collect enough data, you can find all sorts of interesting things that you could do with it.
Right. Like
and even with that, the thing is, and I've always said this before, with the ball python things, nothing is written in stone. You can have a female that does a certain routine for 3 seasons, keep that female a little bit longer, and you'll see that the data actually goes different than what you were saw the first 3 seasons. One of the things that I've heard so many times is that a female, once she goes a season, she'll repeat that cycle every other season. And I've seen females basically continuously that I've used, they'll go off between 4 or 5 months when they laid at one time and the follow-up season that I used that female, there's a big difference within 4 or 5 months from that last time that they laid, that they laid later or even earlier, not exactly the same time that they laid the season before.
I keep a little post-it sticker on my females' tubs telling me when they laid last year, so I can see roughly whether they're in sync again or whether they've skipped 6 months or a year. Lindsay, yeah, I'm a notebook kind of guy. It works for me, and if it works, don't fix it. I think if you're gonna go computerized, you've got to buy into it wholeheartedly and just do the computer system. Don't duplicate, because you're right, it's making double the work for you. So pick one that works for you, and don't let anybody tell you that your system is any better or any worse than anybody else's. If it works for you, it works.
Yeah, you just got a get 'em girl from Rob, Lindsay, so you're welcome. You do you, boo.
No, I don't have a separate notebook per snake. I keep a breeding book where I keep records of my pairings, ovulations, when they lay eggs. I have a clutch book where I keep track of all my clutches. And the notebook that I use most of all is what I call my daily feeding book. And that is a notebook for every single snake, and I just make comments in that notebook. If a snake skips a meal, I don't bother noting regular events that happen all the time. But if I'm concerned about one particular snake, it's skipped 2 or 3 meals, I'll make a note of that in the notebook, and it's specific to that one particular snake. So each day I have a date stamp, and some days are blank. I don't put any notes whatsoever in there. Feeding days, I'll make a note of which snakes ate, which snakes didn't, but I also have feeding cards on my tubs. So I try to minimize the amount of duplication and the amount of work that's involved, because paperwork is quite time consuming. I do everything visually, post-it stickers, colored clips on my tubs, all that kind of stuff. And it makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Shane, what were you saying earlier?
I'm very much on track with Rob, but I use Husbandry Pro, and like all my long-term data, like the pairings, when they laid the clutch, that's all stored in there. So I don't have like an actual notebook other than my clutch cards. Right. So then I just refer back to that. If I want to go back 2 years and see what she was paired to or when she laid, I go there. But then I have all my visual cues right here. Just like Rob, when I walk into the room, I want to know who's doing what that day, go in there, do my work, and bam, out.
Now, your pairing records, and if something unusual pops up in a clutch, if you are computerized, it's very easy to do a search back and see what 2 or 3 generations ago, what the pairing was. You can do that almost instantly on the computer, whereas I have to get my cards out and go back through my card system. I can still do it, and it doesn't take very long because I keep those records. So it doesn't have any advantage other than once you get the data in, it's very easy to access it. But getting that data in initially, I'm just too lazy. I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, gentlemen, I think we did it. Thank you for coming to this little event. I'm glad Ron made it, especially. I thought the hurricane got you, but you were safe. That's my favorite part. Any like final thoughts, or like, do we want to do this semi-regularly? Once a year, Christmas special? I don't know. You can get a hat.
Rob, you still have that hat, right?
Yes, I do. Well, this is the first time I've done this, and I have to say that it was with some trepidation, but I have thoroughly enjoyed getting together with you guys.
You did great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be up for another. If you're short of content, give me a call.
No, I just think like people like panels, people like hearing people who are friends, like riffing off each other, sharing stories, because they need company while they clean tubs, you know.
Let me just throw this out there. I mean, like, heck, you could be the new Horseman.
What?
There you go.
No, I would be honored. Can I be Pestilence? That's how I feel. No, yeah, I would love that. Thank you. Yeah, I just think, the market is down or whatever. People are grumpy, but we need more,
Well,
things
grump
to
is
be
not a
excited about.
variable. That's a given.
Right. We just need to be like, what do we need to do? What's positive? What's moving forward? What's, a good message in our ears while they're at home cleaning tubs, scraping urates. There's somebody scraping urate right now. They really need to dig in the corner with their little spoon. And so that's what I'm interested in bringing. And you all did a great job. So thank you.
Awesome. Love you guys.
Yeah.
All right, chat. You've been real fun, Peter. You're the real MVP, I think. He stayed up all night, so he has to go to bed now. All right. Bye, everybody in chat. We'll see you next.